Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm T,
And I'm Nessa.
and together we are the Casual Fangirls. Coming at you live again with the episode on the highly anticipated
Woo.
Spider-Man No Way Home opening weekend. We have so much to talk about, so much to review, so much to speculate on. We're super excited for it. Before we jump into that though, Nessa, how you doing? Like, how have you been? I feel like we haven't talked in a minute.
I know I've been super busy, but in fandom life, I've definitely been rewatching a lot of wonderful things,
Like what?
including Avatar. And I'm gearing up. Well, I'm still in the middle actually of my Harry Potter watch,
Okay.
but I also did start a new show called Arcane that's on
Okay.
Netflix. It is an animated show. I highly recommend. I'm sure I'll be bringing it up in future episodes when we kind of do our yearly end recap and stuff.
Right.
But great show. But how have you been?
Just as busy. I'm ready for like a break. I could have used the break yesterday, just in
Yeah.
general. I'm ready for a break. I've been in the world of fandoms, I also just restarted Avatar The Last Airbender. I've been like using it as background noise and um, you know, having fun, like diving back into that, getting annoyed at like parts that I didn't realize annoyed me before. Like I was on the episode where they meet Jet and I was like, this dude, like I'm just so like that's been fun. I am on the last Harry Potter movie. I've been on it for like 3 months now.
Same.
I'm gonna finish that next week so that we can gear up for the reunion episode that's airing on the first of the year. So that'll
Yes.
happen. And I've been plugging away at the Big Bang Theory again as like background
Ooh.
noise and like diving back into a story that I enjoy. And
Yeah.
other than that, oh, I gotta do Matrix over the next week. So
Oh,
I'm gonna,
you are
yeah,
right. Oh,
right. It's
that is
next
dropping
week.
soon. Oh, you're right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I
We
gotta
have
put that on my list.
we gotta put it on the list.
I gotta put it on the list
So I'm gonna
for sure.
do, yeah, the December 22nd, The Matrix 4
Yes.
comes out. I think also The King's Man comes out that day. And I enjoyed the other two movies when they came out, so I might watch that as well. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been doing. Eventually next week also I'll probably do some of my favorite Christmas movies since we're in the season for it. I see that you have on a sweater that
'Tis
looks
the
kind of
season.
your sweater looks
Oh
kind of
yes,
Christmassy.
'tis the season. So I've got the Toho Hordor going on. It's definitely like my favorite Christmas sweater. I wear it like every year. So like
So you're not alone because my sweater also is very Game of Thrones oriented, and I also wear it to all like office holiday parties and stuff.
Definitely. Let me tell you about my best friend. That's why we're friends, guys. We wear the same themed holiday stuff.
Yeah, I actually at my job holiday party, there was a guy who had on a similar sweater as you. I'd never spoken to him before
Yeah.
and have not spoken to him since. But when we saw each other, we did a little fist bump and like kept it moving. It was
You
great.
gotta acknowledge
Great
it. You
time.
gotta
Yeah.
acknowledge it.
Such a great time. So that was fun. Do you plan on watching any Christmas movies? Like what's your just real quick, like what are your top two or three favorite Christmas movies?
Um, Fight me if you want to, Yo
Uh-oh.
Mama, but Harry Potter is Christmas movies. I really don't care. Harry Potter is a Christmas
I
movie.
would what?
Harry Potter is a Christmas season movie. I would also like to motion that Lord of the Rings is a holiday season movie too. But I think it's mostly because the movies debuted and like were pretty much released around this
November.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it feels like holiday tradition rewatching those movies. But more traditional Christmas movies that I like to watch is like Elf. I'll do Elf every year because it's just so funny. And my guilty pleasure is like those cheesy Lifetime and like Netflix movies that will star like Vanessa Hudgens or like
Yeah.
Tia and Tamara or something like I will watch them. And I can't even tell you the names of the movies because they're like so corny and I never go back to them.
Yeah.
But like they're just fun to watch during the season. What about
I I respect it. I
respect that.
I respect that. Thailand, right? I'm also doing a re-listen of one of my favorite podcasts that went over all the Game of Thrones episodes. So that's been really fun. I've been using that every morning to get ready for work. Harry Potter as a Christmas movie is a wild take. We don't have to debate it right now, but I will say that I understand why you say that, but I personally, Harry Potter movies are just like an autumn film for me. I don't like ascribe it to a particular holiday, if that makes sense. So that's that. What am I doing? Oh yeah, my favorite Christmas movies, The Grinch with Jim Carrey, hands down.
Yes.
Absolute favorite. I will watch that any time of year. Like I don't care. It is absolutely one of my favorite movies of all time. I love quoting every single thing he says from the movie, especially when I'm feeling when I need to vent and he does the whole like hate, double hate. Like I do that in the house by myself. It's great. So that movie I love. I love A Nightmare Before Christmas. Also, I watched that on Halloween and Christmas. And I lived the entire movie just for Jack's song at the end where he's like realizing how he messed up and he's in the graveyard just like laid out and just like singing and stuff. Like it's so great. And then probably you mentioned like all the corny holiday movies with like Tia and Tamara and stuff. I don't watch them, but they do make me feel very like homely because my sister used to watch them a lot. Yeah. And she'd be in the living room watching them and I would just ignore whatever she was doing. But them being on in the house definitely feels very Christmassy to me. I don't know if I have a third favorite besides your generic like Home Alone.
Oh yeah.
Things like that. I also like the Santa Claus with Tim
Allen.
Tim Allen. Yeah, my sister and I used to watch that a lot.
Are you a Christmas Story kind of gal?
No.
Me neither.
No.
My brother used to love that movie. And I was just like, it doesn't do it. That and like, honestly, Charlie Brown Christmas doesn't do anything for me either. Like, I don't really get into those.
But like, if I'm going to go something slightly more like classic, I would go any iteration or just the story itself of, what's the name of the story where the ghost of Christmas past and present and future come and visit the dude?
Scrooge.
Yeah. That's his name?
Yeah. Scrooge.
Okay, so Scrooge McDuck was a play on Scrooge, right? Like, so that story, what is it called? I forget what it's called, but yes, that particular story I enjoyed. Okay. Anyways, so we're in the holidays, New Year's coming up. We're not here to talk about all that for real. We're here to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home, the latest installment in the MCU. So let's get into it. As you know, before we jump into all the nitty-gritty details, all the speculating, all the recaps, all the instant reactions, we have to warn you that we're going to talk about this movie. You should already understand what that means, but just in case you don't, let me tell you straight up. It means that we're going to talk about the movie that just came out. So if you have not seen Spider-Man No Way Home, if you have not seen the other two Spider-Mans in this particular trilogy of the MCU, if you have not seen any of the other movies in the MCU, you'd probably be okay. Maybe, I don't know. I wouldn't do it. But you should definitely see Civil War, if not the other ones as well. If you have not seen, spoiler alert, if you have not seen the other Spider-Man movies from the early 2000s up until now, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2, you have been warned. Stop listening, or listen if you don't care about spoilers. But if you do, stop listening, go back, figure it out, and come back. And finally, if you have not seen the Disney Plus show, What If, we highly suggest you go back and watch it, or go back to our other episodes. Our very first episode is relevant. The very first Casual Fangirl episode is relevant to this conversation. So if you want, go back, type in Casual Fangirls, What If, Doctor Strange, and you'll know what I'm talking about. So that all said, Nessa, can you give us the recap, please, of this highly anticipated and it looks like record-breaking movie?
Let's get into it. So picking up right where we left off in Far From Home, Peter Parker has to deal with the fallout of the world finding out that he's Spider-Man. He turns to Doctor Strange for help, and in the process, they botch a spell and fracture the universe, which allows Doc Ock, Green Goblin, Sandman, Electro, and the Lizard to creep into our MCU universe. Peter is tasked with capturing these villains and returning them to their rightful universes. However, when Peter realizes that they will die, he decides to cure them before sending them back. But villains start villaining, and the Green Goblin ends up killing Aunt May. In the search for Peter, Ned opens up portals to reveal none other than Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. They join forces with Tom Holland's Spidey in order to clean up this big mess. Holland's Parker is forced with major decisions that will change his path moving forward.
Lots and lots and lots of things to talk about, and we're going to get into it in a minute. But before we start, just an overview about the movie itself and like how people are talking about it. So Spider-Man's No Way Home was directed by John Watts. It stars Tom Holland as Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, in this universe, the MCU universe that we're used to. Right. Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, Zendaya as MJ, which we found out stands for Michelle Jones, which I thought was interesting. We could talk about that later. Jacob Batalon as Ned, Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield, Spider-Man. Sorry, Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man 2, Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man 3, which is a nod from the movie. William Dafoe, Norman Osborn / Green Goblin, Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, Jamie Foxx as Electro, Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman, and Rhys Ifans as the Lizard. Now, we're currently recording this, I'll just tell you, on Sunday. So the day isn't even over yet, but the movie has already been like hailed as the movie with the third highest opening weekend ever. Ever. Definitely, behind Infinity War and Endgame. It's already amassed $253 million in North America and $587 million, or $500 million globally. So far so good. I haven't heard any like bad reviews about it at all. And in fact, we could talk about this later, a lot of people have been texting me, asking me if I think it's better than Infinity War Endgame, which means that people are putting it in the same realm as that. I have a huge problem with that comparison that we don't have to talk about now. We can talk about later if you want, or we can talk about it now. I'm happy to talk about it now. But in any event, did you like this movie,
We'll get to
Nessa? It. Okay. Did you like this movie?
We'll get to it. So here's the thing, right? Leading up to this movie, there's a lot of hype about it. There was a lot of spoilers, a lot of things released. And I feel like that could have easily tarnished the movie a little bit, or like at least the experience. And it didn't. It was such a great, first of all, I thought it was a great movie. But it was also a great like movie watching experience. I went to the theaters with some friends, a theater that's not around in my area. So the crowd was a little bit more hyped up. So it was just like fun watching everybody reacting and gasping and clapping and cheering. And it definitely was like a whole great vibe. But I enjoyed the movie. They had a lot to do and they had a lot to work with. And I felt like they executed it well. How did you like it?
I would agree with everything.
Did you like it?
So I liked the movie. I don't think people should be comparing it to Endgame and Infinity War. I will say it again, but I did. The movie is a really, really good movie. And to your point about so much information about different things that was happening, we knew which villains were going to be in the movie. We knew, right. A lot of people knew going in. I actually talked to, Lawrence last night about it. And I was like, well, what do you know? He's like, I've seen the trailers. I was like, you don't know anything else about this movie? He was like, no. I was like, I'm not going to tell you. Because that means he doesn't know that the other two Spideys are in this movie. Somehow he missed that. Right. So he's going to have a great time. And what I was thinking was like, I kind of wish I didn't do that. I wish that all of that information. Can you imagine watching the movie and then like Doc Ock pops up? Or like... It
made me miss the times before social media and before like technology just started spreading information so much. Because imagine, and like I almost wish I didn't even see the trailers, because imagine being in the movie theater and seeing that pumpkin bomb rolling and hearing William Dafoe laughing in the background and having him pop up. How much more exciting that would have been if we didn't have that in the trailer, if we didn't know all of these people were going to be in these movies. So I'm really glad that they did not put the other two Spider-Men in the trailers, and they let the reveal just be what it was in the movie. But it made me miss those times, man, when you just didn't know what was going to happen.
I definitely agree. But I will say, even though everyone knew because of the trailer that I think that these villains were going to be in there.
Yeah.
Many people knew that the other Spider-Man iterations were going to be in the movie just from like, seeing them on set and stuff like that. So that's great. But even though we knew those two things, this movie still delivered. And I mean, the MC, they did it again. They did it again. Where by the end of the movie, I was like, that was such an enjoyable experience. So I completely agree with you.
It was, for sure, for sure. How did you feel about the storyline overall?
There was one moment in the movie where I was like, oh, now the story is starting. And that was when Peter Parker, when Spidey won, right? Tom Holland's Spidey said, oh, I'm going to cure all these people. And that's when he did that. I was like, oh, now the story, like this is the plot of the movie. Right. So I already felt like I was in the movie for about 30, 45 minutes at that point. I felt like I was in there for a while. So there was that moment made me like, okay, this is a long movie and they have a lot to do. But other than that, the storyline I thought made sense. I didn't think it was too outlandish the way they carried it all out. They absolutely needed to do all of that heavy lifting with Loki and the What If series in order so that everyone in the movie theater didn't have to question what the hell a multiverse was, right?
Right.
They did all of that front loaded in these two series, which is, obviously setting up the rest of the MCU, but we've been questioning what the purpose of the What If series were and how they were going to feed into the MCU storyline that we know. And now we know that they needed to show us how this multiverse thing works so that we wouldn't question it in this already 2.5 hour long movie. So I really did appreciate that. They didn't spend any time really talking about that or having to explain it. Even at the end, when Doctor Strange was trying to like hold the universe together, we knew what those purple, we knew exactly what that was.
That color scheme, we knew it.
We knew exactly what was happening and everything like that. So I think they did a really good job with the storyline. I was shocked. And I don't know why I was shocked at certain points. I was like, I should have saw this coming. Particularly Aunt May. I was like, oh, why didn't I see that coming? I absolutely should have, but I was still sad. I was like really sad when it happened. So I enjoyed the storyline a lot.
So for me, I feel conflicted about the storyline. I'm not gonna lie. Mm-hmm. So on the one hand, what I will say is for the storyline that we're given, it was beautifully executed. It was great. Like
fair.
The way they handled the villains, it didn't feel too overwhelming. They pretty much just like stayed focused on Doc Ock and Green Goblin, a little bit of Electro, but then the Lizard and Sandman really had nothing to do, and they were just kind of like chilling, honestly.
Yeah.
But it worked. It worked. Like I really didn't need them to be more involved than they actually were, to be honest. So it actually did work. And then even the way that they brought in all three Spider-Men and the way they interacted and everything like that, and the way the story actually carried out, it made sense. It was fine. But I just found it I found it a little hard to digest that Peter would risk his family and the universe in order to cure these villains that he has no attachment to and who are honestly awful fucking people. Like, excuse my friends, but they are like awful people. And like, who's to say that even after you cure them and send them back that they're not going to die anyways, right? So for me, it was like, why risk all of that, knowing that you could end up putting everybody in danger and fracturing the universe even more? That was the problem for me. Like, you really gonna risk Aunt May? You gonna risk MJ, Ned, all these people for Green Goblin? That's the one who tugged at your heartstrings. Like,
well, he did that because of Aunt May, right? Like Aunt May like
pushed him
and
into
pushed
it
him
a little
into
bit.
doing that, like into thinking in that way. Because remember, he was like, no, these mother effers need to go back. I'm not dealing with this. This is not my problem. And she kind of nudged him. I agree with you that I was in the movie theater ready to curse out the screen. Like if I was watching this at home, I would have been cursing out the screen, right?
I was like, but why? Send them back.
And
Like,
then I got home and I was thinking about it and I was like, are we really that surprised? Look at Tom Holland's Spider-Man and every other movie he's been so far within the MCU. He's done something stupid like this, just very childish and like
yeah,
short-sighted and immature almost.
yeah.
In all of the movies from I mean, definitely in the last one where he was crap, what was the last one? No, and the one before that, like his whole thing with vultures, like, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Leave it alone.
And that's
There's literally nothing you need to, just leave it alone. Like, what is your problem?
And that's part of the reason why I was conflicted too, because it's just like, why would he do that? But then at the same time, it's like, if you think about Spider-Man as a character, especially compared to someone like Tony or the Hulk, right, where they will let people die. Mm-hmm. They be like, screw it. Captain America for the greater good. Captain America has a bit more of a heart, but let's be honest, his kill count is pretty high. So, but like,
do you remember the elevator scene? Like, I'm not saying they died, but he has no problem laying people out.
But Spider-Man is way more of the person who's like, I'll push you off the building, but I'll shoot a web to catch you. Like, he's very much like catch and release. Like in all of the movies and all the comics, that's his go-to. Yeah. Now, it doesn't mean that people haven't died consequently to like dealing with him.
Oh, we about to talk about that, yeah.
But it's never like, I just let this person die. Like, he always tries to save the person before they die, even though this person has been spending the whole movie, a whole trilogy trying to kill him. That's in his nature. And I get that. So that's why it makes sense. But it was just still like, and we have to remember, man, he's a kid.
Is he though? He's what, 18 now? He's 18. Listen, he's
at this point he's a senior, right?
He's a senior in high school. They talk about applying to schools, and then they jump to them getting their acceptances. That happens in like March, April, May. So we've jumped months, right? Right. So at this point, he's definitely 17, 18. He's been to space. He's seen Tony Stark die in front of his eyes. He's fought off like his old girlfriend's dad, who was a villain trying to take over like tech. He's done all these things, and yet he's still acting as if he can go home and play Legos later. Like, I just don't. It's like, you know, like maybe honestly, like,
but it's still that immaturity. It's still that immaturity. We've all done dumb things. We just don't have superpowers.
That's a great point. Even worse. Honestly, it was giving me like, as I was watching this last night or yesterday, Avatar: The Last Airbender, some of the earlier episodes of that show, Aang is like really annoying. It's just like, can you not be 8 years old? You're the Avatar, buck up. Like, get it together.
But it's like, at the end of the day, he's a kid. Like,
I respect that. I respect that.
Gotta accept that.
So yeah. So to your point, like, I got over it, and that it doesn't, his immaturity and like that decision that he was making didn't bother me, but it absolutely gave me it reminded me of another character from another story we love, Game of Thrones. There's an episode where she's trying to decide what she should do. Should she marry someone from Marine, fucking Hisdar, right? Or should she do something else? And Missandei goes to Daenerys, and she goes like, I've seen you always be able to find the third option that no one else can see, right? Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much what Tom Holland's Spider-Man did in this. And so I'd like to give him credit for that he was able to see a way that no one else even considered until he saw it. So
fair enough. And it was so funny too when Doctor Strange was like, wait, you didn't talk to admissions before you came to me to change the fabric of reality? Like, You didn't make a phone call?
As a as a former admissions counselor, right? And as someone, I don't know if I ever told you this, but like I did the same thing out of high school. I got into a school and they didn't, I never got my financial aid package. And I just chose to go to another school. I didn't call to see what my financial aid package was. Long story short, I had a full ride and missed out on it.
I did not know that.
I don't think I didn't tell a lot of people. I was so ashamed and embarrassed that like.
Can you reveal what school this is?
It was NYU. It was NYU. Yeah. I had a full ride. And I didn't find out until, do you remember back in the day, we're dating ourselves now, when you got accepted to school, you would get like huge envelopes, right? Like just so much paper.
If you got a big one, you know you got in. If it was a small one, right? You got rejected.
So I got the big envelope from NYU saying I got in and all that stuff. Great, ecstatic. Yeah. And then May 1st, the national signing date popped up and I never got a financial aid letter. So I just assumed they didn't give me any money. So I made my decision based off of that, right? On May 5th. So what I was doing was like any piece of mail, I was just throwing it in a shoebox. I wasn't even opening it because I was just looking for the big envelopes from whatever. There was a big envelope in the shoebox that I didn't find until like May 5th, right? And it was my full like scholarship letter from NYU. And again, it was May 5th. 5 days after the deadline. I could have called them and be like, hey, just kidding, didn't see this. Can I still come? They absolutely would have let me come. I know because I met the admissions officer that admitted me years later, and he was like, oh, we totally want to let you come. And so when Dr. Strange yelled at him, I was like, wait, he didn't know. We don't know sometimes. We don't know. We could just ask, you know.
And I think that's the important thing about like Holland's Spidey, right? Is that he really appeals like to the human side of everything. He
really does.
All our mistakes and all our shortcomings, like he embodies that. So I think that's really like the good part to his Spider-Man. And then were you surprised that like Strange was so willing to help him out?
A little.
Me too.
I was a little surprised that, I mean, he said it. He was like, we saved the world together, so I'm willing to hear you out. And he basically, I totally forgot he didn't have the time stone anymore until he said it. Totally forgot. I'm so glad they reminded us of that. But then, you know, he's like, oh, we do this forgetful spell all the time, right? So what's the big deal? So I mean, the way they set it up does feel Doctor Strange, like it's within his wheelhouse at this point in the story.
Yeah.
Like Doctor Strange is not going to do that for anyone just off the street, but we saved the world together, then why not? So that felt okay. Because I know I was worried about that going in. Like, why would Doctor Strange risk
There were a lot of rumors. There are a lot of rumors that it's not our Strange, that it's a variant. I know people were like, it's Mephisto, just as Doctor Strange. You know, we have to get Mephisto in there somewhere.
Get Mephisto in there.
But so I was actually glad the way it played out. I was like, oh, it actually really makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense that he would do this for him. And I got it. So I was just like, okay. And then, of course, he sits there and he botches the whole spell by trying to be like, oh, wait, I don't want this person to forget. And like, why did y'all not iron out the details before we start casting reality-altering magic here? Like, hello?
I blame Doctor Strange for that.
Yeah, he should have took the lead on it.
He should have, because as soon as he started, he was like, well, I'm not going to remember you. And then that's when Spidey was like, wait, what? Like, why wouldn't you say that before you start
casting? What's the fine print? We need the fine print on all these spells.
That was Doctor Strange's fault, in my opinion.
That's why when Zendaya was like, well, technically it's your fault because you cast the spell. I was just like, she got a point.
But can we talk about how he just like said please after she told him to say please?
He really did. He really did.
That felt slightly out of character for him, but I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, I was expecting him to just kind of be like, Scooby-Doo the shit. Like, just repeat exactly what he said and keep it pushing.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know. That was interesting, too. But I guess, what about the fight between Spidey and Strange? So after the villains come through...
The mirror dimension?
Right. After the villains come through, Strange is like, we got to send these people back. Like, we can't keep them here. I rework the spell. When I push this button on this box, everybody goes back. Done story. And Spider-Man was just like, nah, I can't do this. Like, I can't let you send them back. There's got to be a better way, right? And they end up fighting in the mirror dimension. And I was just like, I know movies got a movie, but man, Strange went out a little sad, man. I was just like,
they have to get him off the board, right? Like, you can't,
did.
If they didn't, then everyone's going to be like, Doctor Strange is powerful enough to figure this out. Why is he not doing this? And it's not his movie, right? So you got to get rid of him. I thought it was cute. They used like Peter's like mathematic and scientific ability to defeat him. Like, math beats magic any day. I don't know about all that. But I thought that was cute. But honestly, when they were in the mirror dimension, I was like, did we need to spend all the budget on the CGI? Like, I was sitting there in the movie theater like, oh yeah, like this is cool, and it's like visually like really cool, but like, do we need this? And then after I thought about it, I was like, yeah, we did, because you have to get Strange off the board in order to move the story forward.
A fight, and then we had to let Peter figure out a way to like get out of it. And I think too, it was almost like a way to show Peter's like evolving mind of like, oh, I can start solving problems on my own, right? Because if you think about it, especially our MCU, Peter Parker, from the beginning of like Civil War up until this movie to like Far From Home, he's always been under the wing of somebody or like really had help. So it's like whether he was being mentored by Tony, it was like, are you his ward? And or like in Far From Home, Happy. Fury and Shield had to come, right? And even Happy, right? Happy, especially like in Homecoming. But like Fury and Shield had to come through and like help him defeat
Fury.
Mysterio, right? And help him defeat Mysterio and do all this stuff. So this is the first movie where we're really seeing Peter be on his own. Like this felt like an actual like Spider-Man movie. Like he's trying to figure this stuff out on his own, doing it more or less by himself, you know what I mean, without the supervision of the Avengers or anybody else in that like arena. So I think that also came with getting Doctor Strange off the board. Yeah, now it's just Peter got to figure this out.
Yeah, definitely. Now that I think about it, were there any other superheroes in New York City that
could have helped him?
Yeah.
Oh, there's plenty, but movies got a movie, so why would they call on them?
Is there any in the MCU right now in New York City that he could have called on that we know is in New York City?
I mean, Matt Murdock could have helped. Yes. He pops up in the beginof. We have Daredevil pop up in the beginning. Matt Murdock could have helped. I'm sure She-Hulk is somewhere running around New York City. All of those.
I meant people that we've seen before. Oh, yeah. Clint.
Hawkeye.
No. Sorry, this is earlier. So what I'm guessing is like at the end of the movie where we see Tom Holland going around and it's snow, and I think it's Christmas time. Maybe it's snow, right, on the ground.
Yeah. I'm guessing at the end of the movie.
At the end of the movie, yeah.
Yeah.
My guess is like now that is like the same time-ish period as what's happening in the Hawkeye series right now. So maybe Hawkeye's not there, but you're good. That's a good point. So in any event, yes, we needed this to be a Spider-Man movie, and boy was it, because there were a couple of Spider-Mans.
There were for sure. We had our Tobey Maguire and our Andrew Garfield come back to reprise their roles as their own versions of Spider-Man. How did you like the interactions, if you did or didn't?
I appreciated.
What did you like about them?
Yeah, I appreciated that they took their time with them. So as soon as Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, or Spider-Man 3 is what they called him that's what they were calling each other, right? In the movie popped up, they didn't just rush right in, like back into the plot. They played with it a little bit, especially using Ned's grandmother, I'm assuming.
I think grandmother,
grandmother as like comedic relief to like try to figure it all out, like climb on the ceiling and like do all that stuff, right? So that was cool. Same thing with Tobey Maguire. Same thing when all three of them were in the Statue of Liberty together, and they were just like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, you can shoot it out your wrist!" And like,
where else does it come out? Good question, Tom.
Right. Toby was like, that was all great, and I think, and just to be frank, I haven't watched the other movies recently, so their personas isn't fresh in my head. I remember the plot points, but I don't. Their personas isn't fresh in my head. Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, his emotions and his personality is distinctly different from Tobey Maguire, which is distinctly different from Tom Holland. And you got to see all of those together in their interactions. And I love that. Like when Andrew Garfield stopped and was like, "I love you guys." And they both were just like, "Thank you." Like, I thought that was great. I thought that was so great for him to be like the most emotional one, right? And I mean, he set that up, right? He didn't save the person he loved and like all that stuff. And so just to put a point on it, to me, this movie was a sequel for all three of those different trilogy, like different series.
That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, and it clicked when, spoiler, MJ Zendaya falls off the Statue of Liberty, which has a Captain America shield on it.
For what? For why?
What is that?
That was wild to me. That was so wild to me. I was like, y'all really rebuilt the Statue of Liberty and put a Captain America shield on that bitch.
They attached it to the torch, and it was just like
so wild.
So wild, and it completely threw me off. It distracted me because I was like, why would you do this? And again, I thought about it when I got home, and I was like, if half the population disappears for 5 years, and Captain America, one of the people responsible for bringing it back, who died, where is he? Died. You would want to do some sort of homage. I think that is dragging it by a lot. But
oh yeah, America, that was a hard reach,
right? It was a hard reach for the times we live in right now. But would the United States of America feel that much gratitude to the symbol of our country in those particular times? I believe it. Like, they're doing that to signal how much the country is in debt or is grateful for Captain America. But in any event, back to what I was saying. MJ falls. Tom Holland is going for her. You think he's gonna catch her. The glider, shouts to the glider.
That was like the unsung character of the movie.
The glider is like the biggest villain in like all of Spider-Man's movies, like all series. The glider always gets it done, right? The glider knocks him out of the way, and so now she's falling with no one to catch her. And guess who realizes she's falling, goes for her, and actually catches her? Yeah. Andrew Garfield. And in that moment, I was like, oh, this is closure for that storyline. And that's what made me rethink it of like, oh, this is probably closure for these other storylines. And I loved it. Like, there were a couple of moments where people could potentially cry. One of them we'll talk about in a second, where someone dies. I did not cry there. I cried when he caught MJ.
Did you?
I did. I shed a thug tear real quick. Nice. I was like, oh my God.
The heartstrings.
Oh, it got to me. Because he was on the verge of tears after catching her.
Yeah. I thought it was definitely great the way they brought them together. Like you said, they allowed each Spider-Man to be himself. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, it complemented each other. Because you have Toby, who's like the eldest, the more seasoned, who's been through all these cycles of emotions, of losing people, going through the anger, losing confidence of himself, and coming back on the other side. And we've had Andrew, who, where we left him, was stuck in anguish. So we really don't know where he goes from that point on. Mm-hmm. And then we have Tom, who's the freshest one, the youngest, the least seasoned, and is trying to and has now come to that point where Aunt May dies and he's in that struggle. And it's like those two guiding him through it. Like they're his little guardian angels or something, like guiding him, his spirit animals guiding him through what it means to be Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the important part of him learning what it means to be Spider-Man. Like, you're not a boy anymore. You know what I mean? You're not going to be in high school anymore. You're about to go to college, right? you're about to be a man. So you gotta like step up your cookies. And so I thought they did that really well. The humor that they brought all together was great. Trying to figure out like what happened in your universe, what happened in your universe. Like, who are the Avengers? Like, what is that? Is that a band?
Is that a band? Cool. Are you in a band? Are you in a band?
Their personalities shined so brightly.
It was so great.
It was so great. And I was happy that they were able to pull that off well. And I was worried that Toby and Andrew might overshine Tom.
It was very
not
much
Andrew so much, but maybe more Toby.
Toby, I actually wanted to ask you this. How did you feel about his acting?
I thought, here's the thing. I think you can't expect Toby from Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 and stuff because he's at such a different point in his life when he does get plucked in. He worked things out with MJ. They're probably out there living their best freaking life. I don't know if he's still being Spider-Man. I don't know what he's doing because
he had it on.
Right, because Andrew's like, are you going to change or are you going to just walk around looking like a youth pastor? I was like, yeah, I was weak. But he did have it on under. So hinting that he's still out here doing Spider-Man things.
Or at least ready to do it.
Right, exactly. So I felt like his portrayal was more of a steady, level-headed, time of his life versus where Tom and Andrew are younger. So they're still like ready to be on go. He's like, nah, I got a family. I mean, I'm gonna still do this, but like, I'm chill. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it felt more, I don't know if poised is the word, but like just more mature. I think that's what I'm going for.
Definitely more mature. He was giving me Spider-Man from Into the Spider-Verse vibes, like the older Spider-Man. Yeah. Except he was like over it, right? Which is different. But like if we had a spectrum of like the trajectory of Spider-Man in his life, I would put Miles Morales at one end and the older Spider-Man from Into the Spider-Verse at another end, and then Toby, Andrew, and Tom like right in the middle there. So it definitely gave me
because even when
vibes.
Yeah, because spoiler alert, even when Tom is ready to kill the Green Goblin at the end, right? And Toby stops him. It's not like this desperation. It's so just steady. It's just like, you don't have to do this.
Right. I'm trying to
It's not like, please don't do this. Like, you know what I mean? And it felt very fitting for him. So I know maybe people were expecting more of like, oh, he's not so quirky, funny, whatever kind of thing. But it felt fitting to where he should be in his life at this point in time.
Yeah, it was definitely a deliberate choice. And I appreciate that, definitely.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Especially since we haven't seen Toby in so long.
Yeah.
Like,
he's not young anymore. I mean, he's not old, but he's not. He got the back problems or whatever, right? So, the scene you just mentioned when Toby stopped Tom from killing the Green Goblin. There are 3 Spider-Men there. Nobody's Spidey senses went off when he was about to get stabbed.
That's a nitpick for me, and we'll get into that later.
Okay.
It is. It's a nitpick for me, but we'll get into that later.
I have an answer for it, but go ahead.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely like a shocking moment, and I was like, no! Like I literally screamed out in the theater, like no, because I was like, y'all can't kill this man. Like, let's not do that.
Let's not do that.
And I'm glad that they actually didn't.
I mean,
at least that we know of.
That, but also like, why is he not dead? That glider is like the most effective weapon in all of like Marvel history. It always does what it needs to do, but Toby's not. Okay. All right. Yeah.
But he's still alive, and I'm grateful for that. So I'm not gonna fight it. And I'm totally good with it.
Fair.
But who is dead is Aunt May.
So that shocked me.
How did you feel about that choice, though? As a storytelling choice, how did you feel about that?
So when it happened, when he's telling her to run and the glider pops up behind her, I'm like, oh, she's done. Like, because the glider, 100% accuracy, right?
Right.
The glider should be a freaking Avenger because it's just like you need someone reliable, like whatever. So when that happened, I was like, oh, she's done. And then when she stands up and they're like, like trying to like get their heads together, I'm like, how is she not dead? And then obviously she falls and like bleeding and all that stuff. That was super emotional, very, very sad. Yeah. And as it was happening, I was like, no, they're not gonna kill off Aunt May. That's crazy. Like, why would they do that? I was really like, are they really about to kill her off? And then I thought it was super sad when Happy drove up and was like telling Peter to run. Like he knew immediately what happened and was like trying to get him out of there. And then not the next scene, but when all the Spideys teamed up eventually and met him on the roof of the high school, and they started talking about their losses. They both lost Uncle Ben. I was like, oh, she had to die. It's just a part of Spidey's journey. Like he has to lose. I mean, everyone was comparing like Toby losing Ben, Andrew losing Gwen, and Tom losing Tony Stark as like which death like made whatever. That you would think that was the death that Spider-Man needed to go through. I mean, it makes more sense for it to be Aunt May, honestly. So when they started talking about Uncle Ben Uncle Ben told me the same thing the day he died. It's just more of those like, well, this is just a part of Spider-Man's journey is to lose his aunt, uncle, mom, dad, whatever it is. And that is what turns him into the man that Spider-Man is supposed to be. So I got over it.
I was bothered by this choice.
Okay.
I think I'm still bothered by this choice. Because, geez. First of all, let me say this. It was a great scene. It was well acted. It had me emotional. I was just like, damn. And like just Tom Holland's performance was incredible. It was great.
I don't want to die. I don't want to go. I don't want to die.
But his performance in that was great. I had a problem with it because I did not want to see another woman dying to propel another man's story forward.
What's the terminology for that?
I don't remember.
I don't remember either, but keep going.
So I know in previous podcasts, I have said I did not have a problem with Natasha dying over Clint, but as watching Hawkeye, I've increasingly had a problem with it. And now it's something that bothers me and keps me up at night.
Good. So when it should have kept you up at night from when Endgame came out. And I haven't seen the last episode.
But so watching Aunt May die made me think of Natasha. And I was like, this is bothering me a lot. Because to be honest, I was sitting in the theater and I was like, should have been Happy. Happy should have died. Not that it would have been as emotional or as like heart-wrenching, but Happy still played a huge part in Spider-Man's life and Peter's life, right? But I felt like Aunt May had more to do could potentially have more to do in the MCU than Happy does. Like, to be honest with you, like, what is Happy really doing now at this point? So to me, I would have been more okay losing Happy than I would have losing Aunt May. And like in this universe, we already know he's lost Uncle Ben. We just don't know what happened to Uncle Ben. They don't talk about it.
Do we know that? How do we know there was ever an Uncle Ben?
They've mentioned it before. Because Aunt May mentions that she lost her husband or whatever.
Oh, did she?
Yeah, they just don't talk about it.
I mean, the way she's out here just being like, it's just a fling. I was like, maybe she's just been single. Maybe she's never been married. More power to her. I don't have a problem with it.
But so for me, I just felt like, and I get that because she has more significance, it would obviously be more of a loss to Peter. but I didn't want to see that happen. I was like, it should have been Happy. Just like how in the What If episode he lost Happy. Like I thought they were gonna kind of like recreate that. Like I thought Happy was gonna come in at the last minute and like something was gonna happen and it was gonna end up being Happy dying, but it wasn't. Um and I don't know, it don't sit right with me. It bothers me a lot. I'm kind of hoping that they bring her back, or at least at the very least they could have put her on life support and then like at the end kind of had it be like, oh, okay, she's gonna be all right, some
But
crap
then
like
how
that.
do you marry that with like the fact that she had to die in order for the ending to make sense? Meaning, if you make it so that everyone that knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man forgets, Aunt May would forget that he's Spider-Man, but then they would have to figure out Aunt May and Happy's relation, like how they know each other, right?
Potentially.
Right. Because they know each other through Spider-Man. She doesn't know who
But
Spider-Man actually is, so she would have no reason to know Spider-Man.
but you could high key say that about anything and everything. Because then it's like, he's clearly like still a person, right? But is it just nobody remembers him? So like, we know he's big on social media. So like, is everybody just kind of like, who's that guy? Or like, if he's in pictures, are people going to look and be like,
You mean
who
Peter
is that
Parker
guy?
or Spider-Man?
Peter Parker. I think people know who Spider-Man is and understand what he does and all that stuff, but
they don't know he's Peter Parker.
So if MJ goes back home and sees pictures of her and Peter in her phone or wherever, is she just going to be like, why do I have pictures of me kissing this guy? Who's this guy? Like, you know what I mean?
I would assume all that got erased, honestly, because it doesn't make sense that here's a nitpick, slight nitpick, since we're just doing it now. Why doesn't Zendaya and Ned know that he's Peter Parker when they went to the same high school? Like, wouldn't it just reset to before they found out? Or like in theory, wouldn't it kind of reset to before they found out he was Spider-Man? Which means they would still know each other. They just wouldn't know that he's Spider-Man.
That's the part that I don't understand. Is like, when you say nobody's going to remember Peter Parker, what does that mean? Like, to what extent? Like, does he still have a birth certificate? Like, like how he got an apartment?
Like, no, you know? I mean, yeah, he's obviously, they're doing the whole, like, he's living on his own. He's probably going to go work for the Bugle in like the next series or whatever. So he exists as a person. It's just no one
knows who he is. But like, how does that fit into everybody's world? That, to me, that's like the confusing weird thing.
It's like he never existed. I mean, I think Dr. Strange said it would be like he never existed, which is weird to me. But you know, what are you gonna do?
Like, there's just so many questions around that.
I respect your stance on Happy dying instead of Aunt May. I don't think it would have done the same thing that it did.
It wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been as emotional, but or like I said, put the chick on life support. It still would have been heart-wrenching because it's like, dang, though, you know, my one last family member is like dying. She's not dead.
Yeah, but then he still can't step up and be a man if, like, well, I guess he could, because
I feel like he could. Because then if you do erase him, he still doesn't have her. By the end of the movie, he still wouldn't have her.
Right. She wouldn't remember him.
Wouldn't remember
either.
And her being on life support or being in the hospital and being that hurt, it would have been the same thing of like when he went and saw Zendaya, right? When he saw MJ, he would have walked in that hospital room and been like, look what I did or what I caused to my aunt. I can't bring this back in her life. So I feel like it still could have worked. It still could have worked. It still could have played on those heartstrings. It still could have done all of that. And the other Peter Parkers could have been like, I understand that you're dealing with this hard time right now and that you might lose her. And this is what we went through and blah, blah, blah. I still think it could have worked.
Yeah, maybe, but they didn't kill off Uncle Ben in this series, so they had to kill her off. I mean, we didn't
see them kill off. Yeah, and they even gave her like the line and everything.
Yeah,
like,
that's just comes great responsibility. What it boils down to, I think, with that. But I appreciated it. You know, maybe if they didn't kill off Black Widow, maybe you'd feel a little bit differently. But it's just like woman after woman sacrificing themselves so that a man can like rise up to be find himself. And it's like, can you
Sounds
not like can you I would say, can you not bring the real world into this? This is a fantasy, please.
It sounds like dating. Out
It
here
absolutely is
sacrificing
dating.
ourselves to raise these men up.
So annoying. Anyways, back to the story.
Right.
How did you feel about the villains?
The villains, I mean, listen, Willem Dafoe,
Great.
Alfred Molina,
Great.
amazing. Amazing performances. Like, oh, so good. So good. So good. I mean, Jamie Foxx, I wasn't mad at, but I didn't love. Sandman and the Lizard.
Yeah.
They didn't really have much to do. And I'm okay. Again, I've said it before, I'm okay with that. Like, we didn't really need all of them going full force, to be honest, to have a great story. So I'm okay that they played the background role a little bit more.
Electro was just not a compelling villain to me. I don't think it's Jamie Foxx. I think it's the character that's just not compelling. I appreciate how they let Jamie, I don't know if it was his idea or whoever wrote it in for Jamie to say that he just knew Spider-Man was black.
I love it.
Yes.
That was a great moment. He was like, wait,
Andrew.
you're swinging through Queens.
Right.
You're swinging through Queens and you're helping poor people. I definitely thought you were back. And Andrew was like, sorry?
He's like, sorry? Maybe in one of the universes? Yeah. Yeah. So
that
great.
Was so great. That was such a great moment. But other than that, I mean, even Jamie's performance just overall didn't really do it for me. But I think
it's
that
the character.
I think it was more of like, writing in the character. The character in general didn't have much to really do. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that compelling. And then just sticking him next to Willem Dafoe and Alfred Molina just is
hard to do.
Yeah, it's hard to stand up to that, especially with their history in the Spider-Man series. It's just like it was a tough ask, I think. Mm-hmm. But I did like how they interacted together. I even liked how some of the villains flip-flopped a little bit, like where they were good for a few minutes and then it was like, oh, gotcha, psych, like, kind of thing. So I did like it. It could have been overwhelming. It could have been really sloppy, but it worked out really well.
I agree. Did you think, I mean, in this movie, essentially, we only saw villains from, like, we didn't see none of Tom Holland's villains.
Yeah.
Right. Do you think but I mean, like, how many villains does he have? Here's the Vulture.
Yeah. Did we really need them from Tom Holland's? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
It made sense that, like, if the multiverse is fracturing, that we're getting it from other places. Like, his villains are already there. They're already doing whatever they're doing. So I'm okay that, like, we didn't get Vulture popping, because I think Vulture's in prison at this point.
I mean, yes, but I mean, did you see the preview for Morbius?
I saw it, but I don't quite remember.
Vulture was it Vulture that was in that? Was it in that one? I think so. Yeah, he said to Morbius, let's keep in touch or something like that.
But was he still in prison?
I don't know. You can't tell from the thing, but at least you see his face. Like, he's alive.
Yeah. So he's going to show up in Morbius.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, so, I mean, I don't think we needed any extra villains. I think because you know what it is too? If you brought somebody in like Vulture, then you would have to give him more to do than like what Sandman and the Lizard did. And then I think it would have been too much.
I was actually considering him stepping in on Peter's side based off of how it ended.
That would be interesting.
Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know what would cause the flip.
Well, at the end of the other movie, there was someone that was trying to get Peter Parker's Spider-Man's identity,
right?
And the Vulture protected it.
He didn't reveal it,
and I mean that can go either way, right? It could be like, I want him to myself, right?
Yeah.
Or he saved my daughter or whatever. I took it as like, he saved my daughter. He really was right in the end. Blah 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 blah. So I'm not gonna bring more harm on him, but still, F that dude. Like, I don't think he's like a good guy. Like, we'll protect Spider-Man now. But I do think that there's a line there that Vulture might be on. So
a tiptoe.
Yeah,
it's possible. It's possible.
Yes. Any other highlights or nitpicks from the movie?
Oh, highlights.
Before we get into the after credit scenes?
Yes. Let's start with the highlights. Definitely for me, Daredevil, Matt Murdock in the
That's in the
beginning
break.
was a highlight. Because have you seen the Daredevil series?
No, but now I want to go back and watch it.
It's pretty good. I enjoyed the Daredevil series, and there was a lot of speculation that he would be in it and be a lawyer and all that stuff. And to actually catch a glimpse of him was actually really fun. Toby in general, honestly, was a highlight for me. And what's crazy is in the movie, I had this moment because, a lot of people are like, oh, I know exactly where I was when I watched this movie and blah, 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 right? My memories don't form like that. There was something of when the original score from the first Spider-Man movie played, like his little intro music. When it played, it like unlocked something in me and made me feel all the feels. And it made me realize, although like I've watched like, other like comic book movies before and stuff like that, it made me realize that original Spider-Man series was special to me in a way that those other like Batman movies and Blade movies and stuff like that wasn't. And I was so surprised at the feelings that were unlocked every time they played that music. Yes. And I was just like, he's my Spider-Man. Like forever and always is my Spider-Man. Another highlight of mine was Andrew Garfield redeeming himself, right? Not just in saving MJ, but also just as an actor and his portrayal of Spider-Man, because let's not get it twisted. We all know that like no one really is running to Andrew Garfield as like, oh, that's my favorite Spidey, right? Kind of thing. Or like people don't remember the movies fondly. Let's put it that way. People don't remember the movies fondly. Because to be honest, I liked him as Spider-Man and Peter Parker. I liked his portrayal. I thought it was really good. The unfortunate part was that he had crappy movies, is what it was.
He had crappy villains. He had,
yeah. So it was like you had a great guy and a great actor, but you just put him in a subpar movie. So now, in general, he kind of gets pushed to the wayside. But like with him, in between the other two Spider-Man, like you really see him shine. They gave him moments to shine, and it made you really look at him like, oh damn, you got range, Andrew Garfield. Like he had some emotional moments in there that I was just like, oh, you killing it right now. I was like, all right.
He may have had more lines than Toby. I'm almost positive he had more lines than Toby.
You might be right. Right. And he definitely was able to shine in the middle of them. And it's he did his thing. And I was happy to see him be able to redeem himself by the end of the movie. And I think I would bet that a lot of people are going to go back to watch the Amazing Spider-Man movies, if not for loving the movie, just to see his performance and his actual portrayal of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. So I'm really happy that he got like a second, honestly, like I guess a third chance, but whatever, to show himself off.
I recently saw on the interwebs, which I'm just calling social, somewhere on the internet, a deleted scene, they said, from the Spider-Man, I want to say 2, Amazing Spider-Man 2 movie. He was at a grave, and again, I don't remember which actors played what in that movie, but he was at a grave, and a guy walks up, and he's like, "No, you're supposed to be dead." Maybe it was his dad, because like the Amazing Spider-Man plot had a lot to do with his dad.
Yeah.
So maybe it was his dad.
Were like SHIELD agents or something.
Yeah, something along those lines, right? And I think in the Amazing Spider-Man we see Uncle Ben die, right? Do we? Maybe not.
I can't remember.
Right. But in any event, there's a scene, there's what I saw to be a deleted scene. I can't verify if it is a deleted scene.
Yeah.
Where he is like at this gravesite yelling at this man, like, "No, you were supposed to be dead." Like just the emotion from him is what you see in this in this movie, this Spider-Man movie. And so it's there. If you go back and watch it, it's absolutely there.
He's a great actor. He really is a great actor. They just gave him crappy movies, unfortunately.
Yeah.
is what it was. The next highlight that I have is the subtle Spider-Man meme. I don't know if
Did
you
they do
caught
it?
it. They did
I was
it.
looking for it, but I don't know that I was like, did they do
I
it
was
in
I was look-
the Statue of Liberty?
no. So I was looking for it too, right? Because I thought it was gonna be like the obvious one, all of them in their suits and like
Yeah.
at each other. They did it in the lab. So when they're all in the lab, they're each working on their own thing. And Ned is like, "Hey, Peter," and he's like, "Which Peter? That Peter?"
Oh yeah.
And they're all like pointing at each other. I was like, "Oh, you sneaky bastards!" And I barely caught it, but I was just like, "Was that supposed to be it?" And I'm that was supposed to be it. But I mean, I'm not gonna hold you. I think they should have just fan serviced us and gave us the actual meme.
They should have.
But it was a pretty cute way to bring it in. I'm not mad at it. I loved all the meta commentary throughout this movie. This movie knew who the fans were.
They did.
Felt about all the movies.
They did.
And the series as a whole, and they played to that. So even when they do the thing about like Toby's back, he was like, you need me to crack your back? Like, that was so great to me, because for those who don't know, after Spider-Man 1 came out, Tobey Maguire wrapped up doing Seabiscuit and was on deck for Spider-Man 2, right? And he sends his doctor to be like, oh, I've got a mild back injury. I'm healing from it. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to do these stunts or whatever. But it turns out like he was basically using that as like a negotiation tactic. So Sony called his bluff and was like, well, you're fired. And they got Jake Gyllenhaal on the phone to play Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2. So
I didn't know any of this.
Yes. Toby reaches out to like some of his Hollywood friends and stuff, and like goes to Sony and like all the producers and stuff and begs for his job back, and ends up getting it back. So when I saw the whole thing about his back, I was dying.
I didn't know that background. Wow.
Yes, I was dying at the. The crazy thing was that, so for Spider-Man 1, I believe he got something around $4 million.
Right.
Compared to Andrew Garfield, who only got paid like $500,000 for the first Amazing Spider-Man. But for Spider-Man 2, that man got like 17 million. I was like, bro.
Wow. Tobey Maguire is best friends with who in real life? It's not Jake Gyllenhaal, is it? It's someone else.
I don't know.
Matt Damon?
Is it?
Is it Matt Damon and Ben Affleck? I don't know. I'm messing it up. But he's best friends with another pretty famous actor, or they were best friends for a really long time. I just don't remember who it was. And I thought it was Jake Gyllenhaal, but maybe not. I'm not mad at Jake Gyllenhaal being Spider-Man back then. Not now, obviously. He's Mysterio, but back then,
I mean, it would have fit.
Yeah, it would have worked.
It would have worked. It would have.
That's so interesting. That's cute.
Yeah, and then even when like Andrew's like sitting there and like calling himself lame.
Yeah, it's like, no, you're amazing.
You're amazing, and I was just like, oh, because that's the name of the movie.
And everyone thought he was lame. Yeah,
and everybody thought he was lame. So I loved all that meta stuff. That was great. The last highlight that I have is which is like more like a nod to the comics, but me being like a cyber stalker of like fandoms and stuff. I knew this before, even though I haven't read the comics or anything like this, but I knew this before the movie came out, was that in the comics, Ned's character actually takes on the moniker of the Hobgoblin, but he's like brainwashed into it or whatever, and actually ends up dying before he can like say who framed him and stuff. And so when Ned goes to Toby and is like, do you have a best friend? And Toby is like, yeah, he turned against me and I watched him die in my arms. I was just like, ooh. And then Ned's like, I would never do that to you, Peter. And I was like, would you though? So that was a really fun nod and like callback and stuff. So I'm sure people who read the comics must have loved that moment. But I just happened to like know about that.
I also didn't know that, but I enjoyed that like Ned took that to heart and how
Oh
confused
yeah.
Tom Holland's Spider-Man looked. He was like, "What are you talking about?" Like, obviously, because he didn't know that in another universe, his best friend turns against him. So
Right.
that was great. I mean, to piggyback off that, like, I don't have any of my highlights written down, but one of the highlights for me was Ned being a wizard. It was pretty great. Him using the what do they call them? Sling
The
rings?
sling ring.
Using
Yeah.
the sling rings. I thought that was great. I loved when Doctor Strange came back and he was just like, huh, okay. And he just like kept walking. He's like, did you open that portal? He's like, yeah. He's like, okay. And just like kept going.
Let it be.
Yeah, I loved him. I loved his grandmother and just like clean up all the webs. Like, you're not gonna leave these in my house. Clean it up. That was great.
As a grandmother of color would.
As a grandmother of color would be like, I'm going to bed, make sure all this is cleaned up, whatever.
Right.
I don't know if like MJ's name being Michelle Jones is like some sort of nod from an iteration of the comic books, but I love that they clarify that her name wasn't Mary Jane.
Right.
I thought that was interesting. What else did I like? I liked Happy being like head over heels over Aunt May. Like, he won't take, like begging her to like stay with.
That man stays simping for Aunt May, and
He
it's
does.
like the funniest thing ever. And Aunt May
does.
just be like, we talk. Aunt May be like, we talk. Happy be going around like, that's my girl. We talk.
Yeah, it was fun. That's why I call it a fling.
We kick it.
It's fun. We kick it. Jameson was great too. J. Jonah Jameson was fantastic. And again, I'm just gonna reiterate that the glider really stole the show for me.
The glider was the MVP.
The glider has killed three people now, and almost killed Toby. He killed Osborn in the first one. Didn't the son also die by the glider as well? At the end of the third one?
I don't remember.
I remember
he fell off of it, but I'm not exactly sure what happened after.
Yes, the glider was going for nope. He died because he stepped in to save Peter. And he like jumped in front of whatever. I think Venom or someone was like shooting at Spidey, whatever. I'm in my head, it's the glider, whatever.
Right.
Aunt May, and then he stabbed Toby, which again, nobody felt coming, right? No one felt that coming. There's 3 Spider-Men standing there. I'd like to think that they didn't see it coming because they were so focused on like the emotion in that moment.
Yeah.
Like they were feeling what Tom Holland Spider-Man was feeling, so they were distracted and like had all the energy into that. But come on, like all your Spidey senses go off at the same time at any other point in the movie. Mm-hmm. And this one, you didn't even see him like reaching for it, whatever. So definitely the glider was a highlight for me. The glider was a highlight for me. I loved when he went to school. That scene was kind of hard to watch. Like after everyone found out who he was and he was on his way to school and all the photos, and they get in there and the teachers like built like a shrine towards him. And
crazy.
The PE teacher was just like, you were wrong, Mysterio was right. Like he wasn't having it.
It reminded me of like Hawkeye when it's like Thanos was right. I was like, God,
yeah, that was interesting. So yeah, there were all the moments you said as well, but those other moments I think made me smile a little bit in different ways. Definitely. And then we mentioned some of the other ones with like Jamie Foxx saying, "I thought you were black," and all those other ones. Oh, also the MIT vice provost, so I forgot who she was, like her title, when she was done and she like went at Doc Ock like, "Let me tell you about yourself." I was like,
that was not okay.
That was not okay.
And then she just walked on the bridge to her flight. I was like, life goes on.
Life definitely goes on. And I like the idea of Wong being Sorcerer Supreme is really interesting to me.
Yeah,
because like you're Sorcerer Supreme and you're in like black market fighting pits in Macau, throwing fights with the Abomination, but you're the Sorcerer Supreme. Like what is happening?
What are you really up to? he's clearly got some stuff going on that we just don't know about, because he's out here hopping portals like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it'll be interesting to see. I guess maybe we'll find out in the next Doctor Strange movie, like what Wong has really kind of been up to behind the scenes and what's been going on. But
Yeah.
it's just been, I don't know. I guess he got Sorcerer Supreme business, but
I guess so. I
he
guess
be
so.
out here in these portals. It's actually no, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's actually interesting to me that Ned being a wizard for you is a highlight.
Why?
Because that was actually kind of a nitpick of mine.
I was just about to ask, what are your nitpicks? Why is that a nitpick?
For me, the turnover for him using the sling ring was too quick. I was like, legit.
Because it took Doctor Strange forever to get it?
It took everybody though. Because people literally had to go to a mountain in the middle of nowhere to train to use this sling ring. And here's Ned just kind of being like, oh, my grandma said that we've got powers in our family. Whoosh. And I was just like, and granted, like, it was somewhat of like him winging it and almost kind of like a mistake. And like, clearly he doesn't have the full grasp of it because he couldn't close the portal in the last act of the movie. But it was still like, okay, the only mention that we're going to get is that allegedly he's got some like magic in his family, and like now he can just use the sling ring.
So here's, I'm gonna respectfully disagree. And here are my arguments. One, before the age of 11, when you receive your Hogwarts letter, there's magic in you, even though you don't know how to actually control it, right? Even if you don't know that there's magic in you, if you're born into a Muggle family, the magic is there regardless of if you know how to contain it or if you know that it exists or not. So that's one. Two, as you said, he just had the rings on. He wasn't actively trying to use it. And when he realized that when he moves his hands a certain way, like he gets a little bit of a spark, I think there's something to be said of like overthinking magic. And that was Doctor Strange's problem, right? Like when you know that when someone presents to you that magic exists and you are this exceptionally logical person, we saw it happen with Doctor Strange. It took him forever to let go of all the boundaries of the universe that he was aware of to like open himself up to that. Third, the dude, who was the dude hooping under the bridge playing basketball that Mordo came back and took his powers? I forgot his name.
Pembroke?
I think it was Pembroke. Yeah.
So like that.
I think it was either him or the ancient one who said everyone has this magic in them. People just don't know that it exists. So the fact that I guess what I'm saying is that anyone could have had on the sling ring and did some sort of hand motion and potentially have created a spark, depending on how tapped they were into like the idea of magic to begin with, is what I'm saying.
I think those are fair points.
Okay.
I'll give that to you. Those are fair points. I still think it was rushed.
Rushed, sure. Yeah.
I think it was like, I'm not mad that he's got like sorcery and all that stuff. Period. Mm-hmm. It's just that I felt like y'all could have set this up a little bit better, even if they had like kind of mentioned it like in Far From Home, right? If it was like, yo, how was it working with that sorcerer dude? Hey, my grandma said blah blah blah, right? Even just kind of planting those seeds somewhere along the way.
I agree.
Because I just keep thinking of that scene on the top of the mountain when they're all struggling to get these portals open. Like, I get it. Yeah, definitely. In terms of like Doctor Strange in particular, he was going to have the hardest time because he just couldn't let all of that, logic stuff go in his brain. But like everybody else still was having an issue.
That's because they were thinking about it too hard.
Because they were trying too
hard. Yeah, like they were so focused on doing the thing when really they were trying to just get them to let go and just like have it happen naturally or whatever. So in any event, I appreciate why that's a nitpick. I feel it. I do. I get it.
And then you already brought this up, but my other nitpick was the lack of consistency when it comes to the Spidey senses and the Spidey tingle. Mm-hmm. And this happens through all movies, through all series with all the Peters, where it's like, I mean, movies gonna movie, right? So they gonna present the Spidey tingle when it's like, when it suits them.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's just like, there's these other times where it's like, shouldn't he have seen that coming? Shouldn't he have felt that? Why didn't he feel that? What? Like, y'all just picking and choosing, and there's no rules to this game. And I'm just like, so that to me is just, but it's a nitpick. It's a nitpick.
They spent a cool 60, 90 seconds building up to Tom Holland's spider sense picking up that Norman was changing into the Green Goblin.
Yes.
I just knew like a big like explosion was about to happen because I covered my ears and they like drowned out the sound to show that he was like really zooming in on what was happening.
Yeah.
But it turned out to be Osborn / Goblin. I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming, right?
Yeah.
But he felt it. He felt the psychological shift. But you can't feel when this dude's about to stab somebody.
Right. And that's what I mean. Like, it's just, it's a lack of consistency when it comes to the Spidey senses. So it's just like, whatever, but again, that's being nitpicky.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already mentioned this, but killing Aunt May.
That's a nitpick for you?
Yeah, it's a nitpick. Because it's like, I understand why it's a compelling story choice, but it still bothers me in my heart. But
one of my nitpicks that I haven't put, I'm gonna be honest, I haven't put a lot of thought behind it, but I left the theater thinking like, was it absolutely necessary? I don't know that I buy that it was absolutely necessary for the entire world to forget who Peter Parker is in order to stop the convergence of other universes. So the reasoning, so let's back up. So Doctor Strange, when he was trying to like release them back to where they came from, right? All the variants back to where they came from, right? He basically was just like, everyone who knows that Peter Parker is Spider-Man is now trying to come through.
Right.
So that would suggest that when he first did the spell, the people who came through, like he stopped it before everyone was able to come through, I guess. That's how I'm perceiving this. And he basically was just like, I wish I had a chance to watch it again so I can really remember exactly what he said. But there was something about the logic there where I felt like they just wanted us to accept that Doctor Strange just didn't have the power to fix it. But I was just like, can you call Wong to help? Like, why do we have to jump to this conclusion?
Wong's busy.
But there are other sorcerers, right? Like,
busy.
Wong's busy doing something. He got a baby mother or something. I don't know what's happening, but
he got two families.
Right. He got two families. There's something about that felt rushed. Like I felt like there was a third option that Doctor Strange wasn't even willing to consider. He's trying to hold the universes together, right? So I get it. He's busy.
Right.
But
it's tough.
And I think Tom Holland's like, we'll just make everyone forget, like, is a surefire way to make sure this doesn't happen. Sure. I wholeheartedly believe that there was probably a third option. And when I watch it again, I'll probably be able to come up with a suggestion. But there was something about that when I left, I was like, I don't know that was necessary. I feel like something about that was forced just so they can tee up what they want to do with Spider-Man moving forward. I didn't think it was totally necessary. And then again, I mentioned that them having to erase Peter Parker from existence feels like, again, too much when they could have just like, can we reset so that just people don't know I'm Spider-Man, full stop. Like no one knows that I'm Spider-Man. Because before it was, I want the people who already knew I was Spider-Man to still know I'm Spider-Man. So why don't we go all the way to just forget who I am entirely? Like that didn't make any sense to me.
I guess they're playing off of that. He doesn't have the time stone anymore, right? So we can't just reverse back to that point in time before he's revealed.
But you can say, have everyone forget that I'm Spider-Man, which was what he originally wanted.
Instead of having everybody forget that I'm Peter Parker.
Instead of having everyone forget that I'm Peter Parker.
I think the issue that might come with that is that a lot of these villains, honestly, all of these villains figure out at some point that Peter Parker equals Spider-Man.
Yeah, but
So
if that happens moving forward.
So even if you're like, oh, I want everybody to forget that I'm Spider-Man, all the villains still remember that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. If that makes sense.
That doesn't make sense to me.
So just because his universe would forget that he's Spider-Man doesn't mean that Peter Parker ceases to exist. All of the other villains from the multiverses know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. So as long as Peter Parker exists, they know that they need to come to that universe to get Peter Parker. Because they're not just coming to the universe to get Spider-Man. They're coming to the universe
because
to
he's
get Peter.
Peter Parker, yes.
Right.
But if Doctor Strange realized that his spell worked across all the multiverses, if he implemented the spell to be have no one remember that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, then that would theoretically project across all the multiverses and still solves the problem.
Potentially.
So that there's something about that was just like, this feels like a stretch. Like, why doesn't Zendaya and Ned know that they went to school together? Like, it's really like that piece of it that stood out to me. It's just like, this doesn't feel right. There's something about this that doesn't feel right. So
I think also this is a side effect of MCU growing, is that a lot of things are getting or have the potential to get very sloppy, right?
I mean, yeah, like look at Captain America.
Never forget.
Never forget.
So there's always, because it's like, how do you explain that Peter Parker does not exist? What does that mean? Like, is it because like, right? So like in Deathly Hallows, when
spoiler
in Deathly Hallows, when Hermione is like, oh, obliviate, right? It erases her from all the pictures and it erases the memory from her parents. So like literally to her parents, this child never existed.
Right.
But we don't know if that's the same thing for, forget who Peter Parker is. Is he still going to be in pictures and people just don't know? Like, is he still walking through hallways in school, but people just don't recognize him or don't care for him or care to know who he is?
My assumption is that it's the obliviate that like, my assumption is that Doctor Strange obliviated the MCU basically and erased Peter Parker as a person from everyone's memory. So like to your point, like you mentioned earlier, like didn't she have pictures of them together? My assumption is that those are gone too. Yeah. My assumption
if that's the case, I wish they would have showed that. I wish they would have made it more clear.
You know what? How I thought they were gonna do it? I thought when she moved her hair out of her face and he saw the cut on her head, that he would ask her how she got the cut. Because she would, if she came up, she would have to have a reason for having a cut that did not involve Peter Parker as Spider-Man.
Right, because he was like, "Are you okay?" And all she said was, "I'm fine.
I'm fine. It doesn't hurt anymore." Right. But if she said, "Oh, I just fell off a bike," then we know that like the spell literally altered everyone's memories to erase him, Peter Parker and Spider-Man from their, or at least Peter Parker from their memories. So that's my nitpick.
That's gonna keep me up at night. I think that's the new thing that's gonna keep me up at night is like, what does this mean when we're talking about no one remembers who Peter is? Like how, jeez Louise. Because then it's also reminding me, and to be honest, so here's what I thought was gonna kind of happen a little bit, was that it was going to be like, spoiler alert, in Fantastic Beasts, when they rain down the potion.
I thought about that too.
Make everyone forget.
From the Thunderbird,
But Jacob like still has this almost like feeling like, wait, these things happened.
Yes. Right? So they explain in the Harry Potter movies that when you obliviate, which is what that rain did, the memory is still there deep down, because Hermione, somewhere someone said that Hermione would just JK in like a tweet or something, So that Hermione would just need to go back and like reactivate it or something like that in her parents, like when she goes back to them. Like it's still there. She wouldn't have to recreate all the memories. She kind of just like shut it down or something like that. So I agree with you. And I think where you were going was like maybe there's some sort of something that could spark their memory to remind. I think that's coming. It's just coming in the next movie.
So I definitely thought Zendaya was going to be like, you seem familiar, or something like that. Like I thought she was gonna give like that little head tilt, like you seem familiar. And like when that didn't happen, I was like, oh, that sucks. But also, how is Peter getting an apartment if he doesn't exist? Like, where's your credit score at?
So that's the thing. Saying that it would be like Peter Parker never existed to me that means all of his social connections are severed.
And that's it. But like
that's it.
But just factually he exists. It's just no one remembers or has any attachment to him.
Yes, but that also like so did you see in his first of all, he had a lot of stuff, right? Like I guess his original apartment never got damaged, so I guess all his stuff would still be there. But anyways, he had a GED book. So he never graduated high school because this all happened before high school graduation, which means that he probably doesn't even think he could go back to high school because no one would have a record of him going there. So if Zendaya and Ned, if MJ and Ned don't remember him, no one at the school remembers him. So he never went there. Right?
Yes, no, that honestly, that makes a lot of sense.
So I think that's what the GED book is supposed to like signal to us, like, oh snap, he can't even go back to finish because he never went there in this new iteration. So yeah, we got a lot to think about with that.
This is true. Let's get on to the post-credit scene.
Yeah, before we wrap up.
Right. So in our first post-credit scene, we find Eddie Brock and Venom are in our MCU universe in some Spanish-speaking country. He seems to have a Mexico shirt or I think hat on. I forgot what it was. But and basically he's learning about the Infinity Saga. He's like, wait, so there's a purple alien that came with stones? The aliens don't like stones. They don't care about that kind of thing, right? And so as he gets sent back to his original universe, a piece of Venom is actually left behind, allowing us to finally have Venom enter the MCU. How did you feel about this first post-credit scene?
I have not seen the Venom movies. I suck, whatever. But when I was in the movie theater, the guy next to me, who I did not know, had a visceral reaction to when Eddie Brock showed up on screen. And I sat there for like a cool 60 seconds, like, I know him. Who is he? Who is he? And then I figured it out when I heard Venom talking to him, right?
Yeah.
That got me super excited, right? Because I'm like, oh, now we're going to get Venom in this. And of course, you see the Venom, the little piece of Venom, the symbiote, like on the counter and everything. So we know Venom is coming in a movie or two, right? Really what this signifies to me, though, is kind of cool that, like, in the MCU, in this universe, Venom was not a thing. Spider-Man has no attachment to him. But because Venom was pulled in with the other Spider-Man villains, that means that in other universes, this person, Spider-Man was already connected to Venom. And we know that kind of from the first Spider-Man trilogy. But he's not the Venom that we know, right? From the first Spider-Man trilogy. So I don't know. Goodness. It was right. It was just kind of cool. It was just kind of cool to suggest that, like, even in Brock's universe, there's a Spider-Man that we just haven't seen.
We haven't met yet.
So that is what I took from that I thought was like really cool. That now there's like these two separate running confirmation that there's two separate concurrent running universes in our like movie worlds right now, that we've already seen them cross over a little bit, but does that mean that there aren't more crossovers coming soon?
Oh, there's definitely more crossovers coming soon. And I think that's the most exciting part, is because Sony and Marvel Disney teamed up to do this movie, and we can be pretty certain that they teamed up to do the Morbius movie as well. Because, like you
They
said,
did.
Vulture is going to be in there,
They
right?
did, yeah.
So, right, exactly. So I think we can look forward to a beautiful partnership to come
Hopefully.
with all of these movies. And I think that's exciting to have all of these universes like crossing with each other and like just enriching the stories even more. So it was definitely exciting to see that little
I
piece.
have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Based off of crossing universes, I don't know this. I'm a casual fan. I don't know much, if anything, about comic books. Is there ever a point? I don't know if you know this either. We probably should have Googled it.
Probably
Is,
not.
is there ever a point in time where DC and Marvel cross over?
I believe they do.
I think they do too.
I
Can
believe
you
they do.
can you imagine like a different studio? Obviously, like I don't think Sony has any of the DC characters. I think that's all Warner Brothers, to my knowledge. But like, can you imagine what that would do for the culture if
DC could use the help.
they definitely could? Yes,
Let's be very clear. DC could use the help,
they definitely could.
and I wouldn't be I wouldn't be mad at it. I
Oh,
wouldn't be
I wouldn't
mad.
be mad either.
Oh man. Yeah.
Right?
They could do some beautiful things together.
Oh my goodness, it would be amazing. It would be amazing.
They could do some great things together. Do you want to go over the last stinger?
Yeah. So after all the credits, we see what looks like to be an unofficial, a trailer without it actually being called a trailer for the next MCU movie, which is Doctor Strange and the multiverse
of madness.
of madness. I was gonna say multi-universe. That's not right. Multiverse of madness, right? So obviously, like with all the MCU movies that's been happening lately, there's some sort of existential threat to the stability of the multiverse. It looks like unintentionally caused by Strange, unfortunately. We see Mordo, who was either dreaded or has braids. He got longer hair. He's been in the shop. So we see Mordo in the trailer, and he's still on his BS talking about there's too many sorcerers. Like that's the vibe he's giving off. We see a lot of action, a lot of magic. We see Doctor Strange go to Wanda Maximoff, aka Scarlet Witch, to ask for her help, which gives a couple of different implications that like maybe she's not a villain. Everyone thinks she's going to be a villain. Maybe she's not a villain yet. I don't know. So what's threatening the universe? I'm glad you asked. Was that evil Doctor Strange, aka Strange Supreme, the same Doctor Strange that we were introduced to in the Disney Plus series of What If?
It sure looked like it.
I mean, I'm excited.
It sure looked like it.
I'm excited. It looks just like him. So what do you think?
It sure looked like, I mean, I think it was an exciting trailer. We got a glimpse of a lot of characters who are going to be in the movie, including catching a glimpse of America Chavez, aka Miss America, who in the comics actually has the power to kick open star-shaped holes in reality, which allow her and others to like travel across the multiverse.
Oh.
So I feel like she's definitely going to play a very, very big role in that movie in terms of, I guess, rescuing everyone. But it's exciting. Are we going to get Kang? Is Wanda actually going to turn out to be evil? Or is she going to be trying to like get back her kids? Because maybe they're in a different dimension. Or
Mephisto. Because he got them right in like a comic book timeline.
Comics.
Yeah,
in the comics, Mephisto has a hold of the twins. I mean, anything is possible at this point.
And the last time we saw Wanda, she heard her kids.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like they out there somewhere. And with the multiverse fracturing, who knows? It might turn, because we know this girl will go to bat for the ones that she loves. Forget everybody. So I feel like there's definitely room for her to be like, screw y'all and what y'all trying to do. I'm trying to get my kids back.
Or I'm trying to get my man back. Vision is in some of these other universes too.
Oh man.
right? I mean, the Avengers don't exist in Toby and Andrew's universes, maybe yet, but like
right.
they exist somewhere else. There's
They
Tonys
definitely
everywhere.
exist. Yeah, they definitely exist somewhere else.
Right.
It would just be wild because it's like, girl, didn't we learn our lesson already? Like,
No.
but definitely not her. Because
No.
we've also seen it in What If, right? Where Vision and Wanda will, the world be damned, will ride or die for each other. So who knows what we may get in that sense.
Should be a good time. I hope we get Kang. I think we're gonna get Loki. We didn't see him in the trailer, but I think we're gonna get Loki in the multiverse of madness. It'd be
I feel like
great
it has
seeing
to.
him. I love Loki. It's a great time. It'd be great seeing him definitely. Maybe we'll get that Morbius as well. That's not this. I don't think it's supposed to be the same Morbius, right?
I don't know.
Okay, I don't know either, but hopefully we'll get what's his name in real life? Owen Wilson, right? Back.
Oh,
Is that Owen Wilson playing him?
it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, yeah.
It is.
So maybe we'll see. We'll see. I'm excited for it. Anything else on this before we wrap up?
Where are we ranking this
Right.
movie?
Yeah.
Is
So
this top, mid, or bottom?
I have thoughts. So
Release the thoughts.
so two people in the last 24 hours have asked me if they think this movie is better than Endgame. And this comparison makes no sense to me. So I can understand people comparing it based on the popularity, based on the anticipation, based on the numbers we talked about earlier about how much money it made. But as a movie in itself, there is no comparison. And the reason is because 20 something movies made Infinity War and Endgame as good as it is, right? Endgame was like the tip of the iceberg of a huge iceberg that consisted of 20 movies, right? That's what made it so good, was all the movies that came before it, and this movie tying up so many different storylines and putting a bow on it. This movie does something similar with 7 movies, 3, 2, and 2 is 7. But that's not 20 something movies, right? And so I can understand why people might compare it, but they're on two different levels to me. Like if you want to compare Endgame to something, compare it to whenever we get to the next big bad at the end of that, like what would it be, phase 6 maybe? They do another 3 phases. Those two movies should be compared. I would compare this to maybe Civil War, maybe, in the sense of like it being a movie where you see a lot of important characters. There's stakes that are technically existential, but really like more personable, in my opinion. Like Civil War was like the team might fall apart, not the world is going to explode. But I say all that to say that I would rank this movie probably top tier, definitely top tier, but I wouldn't say that it's on the same level as Endgame.
I definitely agree that it's top tier. I don't know if I agree that you can't compare it to Endgame. I feel like I definitely get the argument that there's way more behind Infinity War and Endgame to try and build up and make that comparison, but at the same time, there's a lot of history behind what's happening in this Spider-Man movie too. And I think it's just fair to say like, hey, was the storyline better? Was the acting better? Was it more compelling? Like I think
it
still could be fair.
Yeah. In those respects,
I think it could still be a fair. Now, do I think it was better than those movies? No, but I think I don't think it's an egregious.
No, yeah.
You know.
To your point, I think the storyline I like better than Endgame.
You like the Spider-Man storyline?
I like Spider-Man storyline better than Endgame. I don't. Them going back in time took forever.
Yeah.
Like that piece of it, I've always felt like okay, I guess. Let's go back in
Yeah.
time and fix everything. Fine. Whenever you go back in time to like fix something, it feels like an out to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's something about that like this storyline just works a little bit better for me. But I agree that you can just compare it against like objective criteria and just compare the two movies. So
Where I think it's tough. So we both agree that it's top
top
tier for
tier.
MCU.
Mm-hmm.
So now if we're comparing it in terms of all Spider-Man movies, right? Where I think it's tough to compare is Into the Spider-Verse versus this movie. Because essentially they kind of do similar things, but I feel like, and a lot of people are trying to compare because a lot of people are like, oh, what movie is better? What movie is better? And I'm just like, but when you have animation, there's just so much more you can do that it's hard to compare to a live action movie. And it's almost like you have to sit back and think like, all right, well, if Into the Spider-Verse was a live action movie, would you still feel exactly the same way about it as you do as an animated movie?
Probably not.
Yeah.
No.
So I think that comparison is tough. But with that being said, I think No Way Home is a top 3 Spider-Man movie for sure.
I think it's the best Spider-Man movie.
Do you?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Are
not fair.
we?
It's not fair to the other Spider-Man movies because this builds off of the other Spider-Man movies, right?
This is
Like,
true.
so that's what makes it so great. It's because it's building off of the other ones. But I do think it's better than the other ones. Even Spider-Man One, which everyone loves, I think it's better. I was just to be frank, I was rereading the synopses of all the other five Spider-Men,
Yeah.
and as I'm reading through the plot points, I was just like, the whole back and forth between Toby and MJ is so annoying. They flip back and forth so many times throughout the three movies, and it's just like, just stop. Like, just come on. So yeah, so
I feel
I
you.
definitely think this movie is the best Spider-Man movie.
I feel you. I don't know. Oh man. I don't know if I would say it's the best. I still feel like for me, Spider-Man 2 outweighs No Way Home. I think. There was just something about the relationship, like the fractured relationship between him and Harry,
Mm-hmm.
Doc Ock coming into play,
Mm-hmm.
Peter trying to balance his whole life. Because to me, that was almost like the quintessential Spider-Man. Watching him try to balance college life with being a superhero and trying to pay rent and do all these things, like that felt very Spider-Man to me. Um, so to me, Spider-Man 2 would outweigh No Way Home. But that may change for me in the future. Who knows? It's not cemented in stone. But for right now, I'm gonna have to say Spider-Man 2 is over No Way Home.
That's interesting. I respectfully disagree.
and
But
then
I understand that logic. Like
and
one
then I feel,
feels the
yeah,
most relatable.
and I feel like Into the Spider-Verse is like in a different realm of its own. But I mean, if you're gonna put it in the running, man, it's tough. Cause like I really don't want to compare like an animated movie to
You
like
don't have to.
a live action, but
You don't have to.
I would probably put it over No Way Home as well.
You don't have to. What is it about Into the Spider-Verse that you think that made it so great?
It was Miles Morales portraying or like getting the powers and stuff like that to me was great. The way the other Spider-Men came together was great. The humor in it, fighting, essentially what they bring together to be the Sinister Six, and kind of like some of the plot twists and stuff like that. Like, oh, she's Doc Ock now.
I don't remember any of that.
Gosh, fair.
I don't. As soon as you said Sinister Six, I was like, I don't remember them being in the movie.
Yeah,
I don't think I've seen it since it came out in theaters.
because a bunch of the villains got together and like I'm assuming basically what was their version of the Sinister Six.
Yeah.
And did all of that. And then just even the relationship between like him and his uncle, and finding out that his uncle was the villain. I don't. It was a lot going on that it really, like, I think tugged emotionally, that I enjoyed. But like I said, this is not set in stone. No Way Home was really good. Oh. And we're gonna remember it for the emotional parts of it. We're not gonna remember it for the fights, honestly. That's not gonna be what
it was cool seeing 3 Spider-Men like fighting all at the same time. That was great. I didn't know enough about their costumes to be able to tell them apart, but I thought
that was tough for me. As a casual viewer and a casual fan, that was very hard for me, except for Tom Holland's, because he had like the nanotech one.
Yeah.
So like his spider is so different looking, but like watching them all swing together, it did get kind of confusing. Like, oh shoot, who's who?
I don't know who's fighting who. Yeah.
Right. So that was, on my casual eyes, was a little tough.
Right.
But we're gonna remember it for Toby and Andrew coming through the portal. We're gonna remember it for Green Goblin popping up. We're gonna remember it for Aunt May dying, and just all the little moments that all the Spider-Men had together.
Andrew catching MJ.
Oh yeah.
Toby being stabbed by Green Goblin, like all of those. Yeah.
Yeah, those are the things that we're gonna remember.
Andrew catching MJ is probably the highlight of the movie for me. And again, that is because of what they build up off of the other, those movies. But that definitely like resonated with me more than a lot of other moments in the movie. So I think you're right. I agree. The emotional moments are definitely what carried the movie, including the humor.
Yeah, that was a top moment for sure. And to be honest with you, Tom getting ready to murk Green Goblin, I was ready for it.
He wasn't gonna do it. I mean, no, he would have did it, but it wasn't going to happen, is what I should say.
Yes, that's the thing. I knew the MCU wouldn't let it happen, but the fact that his mind was ready to go there, I was here for it. I was ready for it. Because it was like, dang, I sacrificed all of this to try and help y'all. And you turn around and did all this and killed my aunt. Like, nah, you got to die. Like, I was here for it. And I was, call me grim, but I was low-key kind of hoping for it.
I mean, I was waiting for it too. Like, do everybody a favor and just
let it be.
I mean, because now Toby has to go back to his universe with the like recovered Harry Osborn, but he just stabbed him.
I guess. I mean, and that moment is also fitting, not just because he is the older Spider-Man and not just because Norman came from his universe, but also we got to remember that was his best friend's dad at the end of the day. And like, because I remember leaving the theater and thinking about it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's his best friend's dad. And
not only that, but Harry used to want Peter to be his son.
Yeah.
Not Harry.
Norman.
Yeah. Norman. Yeah, Norman wanted Peter to be his son.
It was, so it's that complicated relationship. And for the longest time, Harry thought that it was Peter who killed his dad. So now it's like, here's my chance to actually really save him from the thing that killed him in the first movie. So it's just like, boy, when the MCU be tying stuff together. Man.
So I will leave you with this question before we really wrap up this time. We've been on for a while.
We have, but
so Tom Holland's Spider-Man cured these 5 villains. Effective, and then sent them back to their universe, right? Now the timelines have changed, correct?
Absolutely.
What does that do? Is the TVA pissed? I don't know.
Are we going to get season 2 of Loki where they're like, this was supposed to happen?
I don't know. But I was just like, why did I almost wanted, like, does Doctor Strange not know about the TVA? Because when Doctor Strange was like, you can't do this. This is what's, they're supposed to die. It's fate. I was right at that moment. I was ready for him to be like, the TVA is not going to allow it. Like, for him to just know that that like it for him to just go into more detail as to why you cannot change timelines of other universes.
So I didn't expect him to bring up the TVA, but
Maybe not, but just
there's
yeah.
there's precedence of the Ancient One when the Hulk goes there and she's like, you can't just pluck things out of the timeline. You know what I'm saying? And then it takes the Hulk being like, well, what if we put it back right where it was and blah, 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 and whatever. Right? Because she was like, if you pluck things out, the timeline branches off and blah, 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 which leads us into like the whole Loki and Kang and everything. So I feel like if the Ancient One knew that, and at some point Strange was Sorcerer Supreme, he should know that as well. And that should have been somewhat, I mean, granted, he did try to stop him altogether.
He did.
So, I mean, I think if he had explained it to Peter in that kind of way, it would have made Peter think differently about everything, right? But at the end of the day, Strange did try to stop him. He's like, they have to go back. They have to die. Like, that is their destiny. Like, we can't just mess with that. But if he had explained it in the way the Ancient One explained it to Hulk, I think Peter would have took it differently. Because you're right. Now you've changed essentially these people's motivations and who they are. And now you're just trying to drop them back in their universe. And it's like, well, didn't we make like 15 other branches in each universe now? Like, what does that mean for them?
Right. Because if we think about, and I mentioned this to you, I think before we started, the fact that Norman Osborn is dead at a certain point in time. Like, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is way older than he was when Norman Osborn actually died. So if Norman is goes back to his point in time and never dies, that changes the complete trajectory of where Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man ends up.
Right.
Harry never turns into the Goblin. They're still like, all these other things are now changed. So yeah, like how does that even, like, what? Like, how does that even
Because that's the thing too, right? When they pluck, oh man, we're okay. But when they pluck the villains out, they clearly pluck them at a certain point in time before they die and whatever.
Right before they die.
And for each villain, that is a different point in time.
Right.
And then when they pluck out Toby and Andrew's Spider-Man, they are past the point of when these villains have died.
Yep.
So it's also kind of like, how does this work? Like, why was not everybody plucked out at the same point in time and then dropped in here? Like, how is it just that we're picking and choosing when these people came in and dropped in? So that's also,
it's weird. Like, you're picking people from different points in time of individual universes, right? You have 3 villains from Toby's universe that all came at different times, I believe. Yeah. But you're not picking people across space, because Brock ended up in the same country he was in his other universe. He didn't end up in New York City.
Right. He ended up wherever he was.
Wherever he was, just in this universe.
But I guess that works for like Spider-Man and all their villains too, because they're all in New York.
Fair. But my point is that why would you pluck across time, but you can't pluck, like, why is this not happening across physical? Yeah, like across physical distances as well. It's like, I guess that's what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
So, who knows? Stay tuned, I guess. I don't know.
We have to, because I think we're going to get a lot of answers in Multiverse of Madness. I wouldn't be surprised if them putting the villains back plays a part in that,
is the thing that actually, maybe that is the thing that sparks it. Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be the thing that, it could be. I don't know if it'll be the thing that sparks it, but I think it's definitely going to play some sort of a role. I really need to watch these movies multiple times. But I definitely think we're going to get some answers out of what's happening. Who knows? Maybe we'll find out what happened to Cap. A girl can dream. A girl can dream. I want to know what happened to Cap. Where is he? How did he end up back there?
Where is he, or where has he been? Like, give me just give me, where is he now? No, I don't want, I want to know where he's been and how he got back to that bench. Just tell me how he got back to the bench and I'll be fine.
And
I
what
don't
he
care
was
where he
doing
is.
that whole time.
And what he was doing the whole time. Just tell me, like, you don't even tell me what he was doing. Tell me where he was when he was gone and how he got back to the bench, and I'm fine.
Oh man.
Was he in our universe when he was gone, like in between, or was he in another universe? And if he was in our universe, how did he sneak onto the Avengers compound without anybody noticing? And if he was in another universe, how did he get back and sneak onto the Avengers compound without anyone noticing? Like,
so wild. So wild.
The Avengers compound that eventually people like ransacked and went through, according to Hawkeye, like whatever. Anyways.
Right. But all in all, we enjoyed this film. It was a great time. I think it was so highly anticipated and delivered. It delivered. They stuck the landing. They really did. And Marvel movies tend to have like that third act problem. I didn't feel that.
I didn't feel that here neither. I think
the conclusion was great. That third act was great. They brought it home. No Way Home, but they brought it home. And they landed. So I'm really excited to see what the future holds. We don't know particularly what the future holds for Tom Holland playing Spider-Man. We do know that he's going to do at least one more MCU movie. In what capacity, we're not sure. We don't know how he's going to move forward. He is a young actor. Maybe he wants to do other things. Who knows? And just playing Spider-Man forever is not in his cards. Mm-hmm. Which could leave room for Miles to come through. Just putting that out there. It was a fun ride. It was a fun ride. Any final thoughts you want to share about the movie?
No, if you haven't seen it, then I don't know how you got this far into the show, almost 2 hours in, like just having us talk about it. Go watch it. And if you have seen it, just let us know how you feel. Let us know in the comments. Let us know if you agree, if you disagree with us. We've had a couple of highlights and nitpicks. Let us know how you feel about those. Do you think Aunt May should have died? Do you think erasing Peter from everyone's memory was the only way to go? I'd be really interested to hear what other people think. So let us know.
Absolutely. So with that being said, we are signing off. I am Nessa.
And I'm T.
And together we are the Casual Fangirls. Make sure you follow our socials. Check in with us. Casual Fangirls _. We are on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, do all of the things. And we will see you guys next time.
Bye.